And we're live. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Sorry for the delay, everybody, but as you probably have guessed, we had a little bit of a technical glitch. My name is Justin Cutroni. I'm the analytics evangelist here at Google, and we're excited to have you here on our Hangout. This Hangout is part of our Analytics Academy e-commerce course. For those of you that don't know, Analytics Academy is our online learning platform for Google Analytics and digital analytics. We've run courses like Digital Analytics Fundamentals, the Google Analytics Platform Principles course, and now we're running a course about e-commerce analytics and how to do that with Google Analytics. So today, during this Hangout, we're going to talk all about the course, some of the questions we've gotten from students, and we're going to do that with a product manager from Google. I want to introduce Marcia Jung. Marcia Jung is our lead product manager for Google Analytics e-commerce. Welcome, Marcia.
Thanks, Justin.
Tell us a little bit about what you do as the e-commerce product manager.
Sure. So I'm a product manager on the Google Analytics team, and I'm responsible for understanding and addressing all the different analytical needs for e-commerce customers. And as you mentioned, Justin, just about a couple months ago, we launched our enhanced e-commerce offering publicly. So to talk more about enhanced e-commerce.
Yes, so that was a great lead-in. It was perfectly timed right there. This is a great place to start. The number one question I think a lot of people have is, why did we basically relaunch a completely new way to track e-commerce websites?
Sure. So as you all know, Google Analytics does a great job of providing an incredible amount of information about online activity and what users are doing on the site. But when it came to e-commerce, we really only captured successful transactions. And we understood that e-commerce users had very specific analytical needs. And so we embarked upon trying to understand what those requirements were and then how to address them. And as we went through this process, we realized that we had to do a complete revamp of our e-commerce reporting. And this included changes to our tracking code, our data model, as well as our front-end reports. And that culmination of that entire revamp, we've just launched as enhanced e-commerce.
So why don't we start? Why don't we start kind of at the bottom, right? And so if I want to use enhanced e-commerce, we actually had a bunch of questions about this. What do I need to do to set up enhanced e-commerce? What do I need to change on my site, and how do I go about doing that?
So enhanced e-commerce is part of Universal Analytics, and it's part of the core GA platform. So it does require that you are using Universal Analytics. And as I mentioned, this actually does require tracking code changes. So one of the key pieces that you will do is start to take a look at the new tracking APIs specifically for enhanced e-commerce. And then you'll map out exactly how to add those new tags or those additional API calls to your site. Once those tags are live, within the Google Analytics tool itself, we also ask that you enable a new admin setting within your views so that you can start to see the new enhanced e-commerce reports.
So let's dive. There are two really interesting things there, right? So there was the coding part, and then there's the enabling inside of GA admin. Tell me a little bit more about the coding parts. Like in the old Google Analytics e-commerce, basically I had a special tag that I would put on my thank you page, and that would collect things like transaction amount, the products that were purchased, sales, shipping, all that stuff. But now there's a lot more code that I could use, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yep, absolutely. So I mentioned earlier about how we were trying to address more of the specific analytical needs for e-commerce users. So as I mentioned previously, we were just capturing transactions. And we know that in a shopping, sort of in the buying process, users are actually doing product detail or viewing product detail pages, they're adding items to cart, they're starting the checkout process, they're removing items from cart, and they're even refunding products as well. So we want to be able to capture these specific shopping behavior events or activities through the tracking code so that you can start to analyze and optimize your site based off of this data. So in terms of how we're able to track and capture this information, we've created a new set of APIs that you can actually apply across your site, so not just on that thank you page, that helps you identify what is a product detail view page, what is an add to cart event, and what constitutes the various stages of the checkout process. The other key piece that we added is also the ability to support products. So a lot of our Google Analytics customers were trying to analyze this information today by using custom variables or custom dimensions. So what we've done is we've actually added support for product entities so that you can start to add all this product information to a particular Google Analytics hit, whether that's a page view or event, so that you can start to associate the particular add to cart event with a specific set of products. So those are really the two main components to the tracking code that you'll be changing. You'll be adding the product metadata and then specifying what type of action is being taken on those products.
And some of my favorite type of data now that you can collect with the new enhanced e-commerce is around things like lists and promotions. And I remember for a long time, e-commerce businesses have been asking, how do I analyze this merchandising unit? Or, I have a scroller on my homepage, and I want to know if people are clicking on this, right? And if that's what's driving them to the product pages. And all of this new data supports that, right?
Yes, so exactly. One of the key asks that we've heard from some of our top customers was that they're making very specific merchandising decisions on their site. So they're saying on their landing pages, on their category pages, or within specific merchandising blocks, they're doing a best guess at, am I showing the right products on the right pages? And so they needed to be able to take a data-driven approach to that. And so what we've enabled is the ability to create these product lists, which can represent a merchandising block, it can represent a category page, or even a search results page, so that you can start to analyze how many impressions or views of a product were served on those pages, and were users actually clicking through on those products, and then ultimately were they purchasing them in the same session. So yes, we are adding the ability to analyze sort of the efficacy of your different merchandising efforts.
Yay, that's like one of my favorite new things. I'm so excited for that.
Good to hear.
But so obviously the huge upside is all of this increased analysis, right? So now we're not just looking at kind of the sliver at the end with transactions, we're looking at that entire process of what's driving people to the product pages, and then what are they doing, adding and removing. That's good. The bad is coding, right? And coding's not bad. I don't want to say it's bad, but whenever we have to touch the website to update tracking code, it can be kind of painful. That's why we have tag management. And so is this working with tag management, and is it easier with tag management?
Yes. So we do have support for Google Tag Manager. There are some, it does require some changes potentially to your site, but a lot of our users who are starting to take advantage of enhanced e-commerce are actually doing so through Tag Manager. So there are a couple of different ways in which you can implement with Tag Manager. So one is to use macros, if you're familiar with them, and the other is to use the data layer approach. A lot of users, in order to get started more quickly, will use these macros or these abilities to pull out the necessary data from your page through macros so that you can send that information to Google Analytics through Tag Manager. So yes, in order to, we do see a lot of our users trying to take advantage of Google Tag Manager so that they can get set up more quickly with enhanced e-commerce.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the data layer. I think like that is absolutely, if I'm a business, I'm always putting more and more data into that fundamental, that bottom foundation of my page, so I can just suck it into Tag Manager and then send it off to GA in whatever format. So, so the other part I just wanted to touch on briefly was you mentioned you have to go into admin and you have to enable enhanced e-commerce. So one of the questions we had is kind of related to this. What happens to my historical data? Does that change?
And that's a great question. That setting within the admin section is really for display purposes only. And the purpose here is that we didn't want to have, two sets of e-commerce reports. And so you by no means are going to be losing historical information. And in fact, that historical information will still appear in the new reports. It's just that we only captured transactions before. So, for example, the new funnel report that we have will only show sort of users that came to your site and then the final stage where users transacted. But all that information is still absolutely intact. And in fact, if you wanted to, for example, view the old reports, you can simply switch the toggle within the admin setting and then view the old reports.
Awesome. That's huge. Whenever, yeah, people always, we want to make sure historical data is still there, it's still okay, you still have access to it.
Exactly.
Cool. All right, so let's transition. I think that's a really great overview of kind of how it changed, why it changed, and obviously it's going to take some planning for any organization to migrate to this. But the reporting side is really where I think it's super awesome, right? Because all of these new data types generate new reports and, like you said, new data in analytics that you can use in multiple different ways. In our e-commerce course that we're running right now, we talk a lot about the checkout behavior report, product list performance report, and then the generic product performance report. What are some of the interesting use cases for the other reports that are in analytics, like the shopping flow report?
Sure. So I think the shopping flow report is really a macro view into how users are navigating through the shopping funnel. And so it's really important, one, to get a high-level snapshot of how users are progressing, but that table below gives you a lot more ability to actually analyze how different segments of your users are navigating through that funnel. So you'll be able to take advantage of all the rich Google Analytics dimensions in order to break out an analysis of users through that shopping funnel, whether it's by geolocation information, the different campaigns or channels that users are coming through, or even things like device category or browser type. And then just another point there is that you're able to start to compare how do those specific segments compare to the overall average. So you're able to see where are potentially pockets of users or missed opportunities where users are falling out in that shopping funnel, or potentially areas where you are seeing like gains in particular areas where you want to understand and take and learn from those particular segments.
So one of the things, yes, I love that feature, the segmentation feature. One of the questions that a few people have asked about the shopping behavior report is, obviously it shows like here's overall traffic, here's how much traffic that actually like views product pages, adds to carts, remove check. So you have this like nice, like you said, a macro view. I guess the question becomes kind of like from a macro perspective, what's normal, right? Like, so I don't think anyone's going to see like a linear, but it's more like it's a much steeper curve. What's the best way to do analysis? Like compare it historically, or?
Sure. So I think we've designed those reports in a very specific way so that we can address different types of businesses. So some businesses you do see sort of a very like a steady drop-off from stage to stage. We've also seen other sites where there's a lot more content on the site, so you see a huge drop-off from the first stage to the second stage. And then we're also seeing, for example, different sites where users are coming back multiple times before they purchase. And so you'll actually see really interesting trends in terms of how many sessions have product detail views or add to cart events or checkout starts. So actually what we're seeing fairly frequently is that there's an uptick in the number of users that start the checkout process because they're starting the checkout process a few times before actually committing to to purchasing. And a lot of times they'll have things already saved to cart. But to your question around how can I actually start to do, meaningful analysis on top of it, I think, for all Google Analytics users, you're very familiar with our powerful segmentation capabilities. So you can, of course, apply those different segments on top of the funnel, so you can start to analyze, is a particular segment seeing, you know, a higher cart abandonment or checkout abandonment rate. And this is actually can be applied to the table below that I mentioned as well. So that table below is a breakout by a specific dimension. But you can apply a segment on top of that. So for example, I could say users who have ever made a purchase or who have purchased, and you can see a breakout by device category.
Wow, that's really powerful. That's awesome. So one of the other things that we were talking about, you know, you just mentioned segmentation, is doing more of a product type analysis now. And can you maybe give us a little history of why that wasn't exactly possible before, and then how can we do that analysis now?
Sure. Probably the best example is to go back to when we were talking about understanding exposure of products on your site. So if users wanted to understand how many times was a particular product shown to a user in a session, this is what we call a product list view or an impression. Previously, you had to send custom events and potentially string together, you know, the product name and like the event label. That gets very cumbersome because you end up sending way more hits than you really needed to try and address a particular type of analysis. So now what we're able to do is actually send all that impression information with a single hit. So that really makes it much easier to do that type of analysis. And one of the pieces that we've added as a result is what we're calling product scope. And this appears now throughout the product, and it's also manifests itself in segmentation. So one thing to note is if you are creating segments based off of product dimensions or product lists or product metrics, you want to make sure that you're selecting the per product scope so that you're, again, tying that condition to a specific product. Because again, previously we had support for users, sessions, and hits, which were either events or page views, and so now we've added products, so you can do very product-specific types of analysis.
So could I create a segment in analytics and say, show me all of the transactions that included a certain product ID?
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, you can start to ask questions like, give me all sessions where a particular product was added to cart, or a particular product was included in the start of a checkout process. So you can get very specific in terms of the types of information that you're targeting, again, getting very product-centric in terms of the analysis that you're able to do.
Wow, and so does that, and I could probably build some custom reports too, based on products and product categories. So if I'm a product manager at an e-commerce company, I could have a whole report just for my product line.
Exactly. So again, another one of the key asks that we heard from customers is that I have a very extensive product catalog, and there are all sorts of attributes that I want to analyze my product performance by. And so these can be attributes like product category or size, color, variance, all different types of information that I'm tying to a specific product. And so since we're able to support, as I mentioned, products, you can actually pass that data into Google Analytics and start to do analysis around what are my top performing categories of products, or what sizes of a particular product are most popular on my site.
One of the things that I really like about this as well, and this kind of ties what you see in the reports back to the code, is we now have more hierarchies, right? Like before, we were really restricted on a product and the category that it belonged to. So how much more can I do? How did that change? How much more can I do with it?
Yep. So for product category, we are supporting it out of the box with enhanced e-commerce, and that particular product category is a 5-level deep hierarchical category. So you can pass in the hierarchy in which a particular product belongs to, and then you can do analysis and roll-ups by various levels within that hierarchy.
Finally, yay, that was good. I'm so excited we have that. So another thing that we used to hear a lot of about e-commerce was that the data and analytics, obviously we were using it to measure ROI, and it was great to have it, but in a real business, the data you collect from e-commerce when a transaction happens isn't really like the full story, right? Like because people return products, and we have this whole after effect that we never took into account. And so I know one of the new features is refunds. So why don't we quickly go over like how does that actually work? How do I process refunds in analytics?
Yes. So again, this was one of the top asks from a lot of our e-commerce customers, and we now do support refunds, and these can be partial refunds or full refunds. So, for example, if I bought 3 different products, you might just be returning one of them, or you'll be returning the entire transaction. And you can send refunds to Google Analytics in 3 different ways. One is through the JavaScript. So, for example, this is typically if you have a self-serve section on your website where I can log in and view my orders and potentially cancel one or have a refund issued to myself. That's typically the most common use case for using the JavaScript to send a refund. The second is to use the measurement protocol. So again, this is sort of that open wire format that a lot of users are taking advantage of when sending data from offline systems. And then finally, we also support a data import for refunds where I can create a comma-separated value list or CSV file that has a list of all the refunds that I want to upload to Google Analytics. So that CSV file takes a specific format. It's keyed off of the transaction ID, and then you'll pass in what you're refunding and the refund amount, and you can upload it to us, and then we'll process that within Google Analytics. And then in the reports themselves, you'll see a different refund metric associated with the transaction and the specific products.
Got it. And so I think that's really important to make that last point clear. It's awesome because you'll see like product ID, revenue, and then refund would be another column. But one thing we don't do is we don't go back and reprocess the transaction. So if the original transaction was $100 and 20 was returned, it doesn't change it to 80.
Yep, exactly. So we do preserve the original transaction value.
Got it. Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I think that's hugely important for people to know that they can adjust the data and analytics, based on that additional behavior. And I love the import feature, right? Because I think that, the measurement protocol is cool, but I think the import feature is probably the most efficient way to do it from a business perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Awesome. So, all around, this is just soup to nuts, way bigger, and there's way more data. We actually had a couple more questions that I want to get to, specific questions. If I discover in my checkout behavior reports that the drop-off rate for a particular step is really high, what should my next analysis steps be? Is there other data that I should look at before taking action? And you kind of touched on this a little bit with segmentation.
And I think that's exactly it. Really, if I were to recommend sort of next steps, if you were to see a drop-off in a particular stage within the checkout process, I would start with the usual suspects, and these are typically looking at device category, browser, screen size, geolocation information to see if I can identify any specific trends or patterns that might be contributing to that drop-off. Once I've ruled out that those aren't that there's nothing particularly interesting by those different segments, I would start to take a look at specifically checkout options. And this is where I'm able to pass in information about a particular checkout stage. So for example, you could analyze by guest logins versus member logins and trying to understand those segments to see is there a specific, like a higher drop-off rate between those two. Alternatively, you could try and understand where exactly in that checkout stage users are falling off. So for example, are you calculating shipping and tax in a later stage and seeing that users are dropping off after seeing that information? So that's the type of analysis that I would go through that if I were seeing that type of data in the checkout behavior report.
Now, with that segmentation, can I also segment by custom dimensions, right? Because I know a lot of e-commerce businesses are using custom dimensions to store information about the customers, like what they've done in the past, purchase histories, other attributes. Like, is that available as well in the new reports?
Yes, so I mentioned that you have the table below as well as segmentation. So the table below allows you to break out by any session or user level custom dimension. And then you can, of course, define a segment that includes this custom dimension as well. So both
Awesome.
are supported.
Cool. So we had another question I wanted to touch on, and this one touches on actually two things that are awesome. First is e-commerce, and second is mobile. So the question is, I'm a game developer, and I want to use enhanced e-commerce to measure in-app purchases. Can I do this for iOS?
Yes, so this is something that we've just launched in the last week. So we do have full support for enhanced e-commerce for iOS as well as for Android. So those are available now. If you look at the analytics developer documentation, you'll be able to see information about how you can get started with mobile app support for enhanced e-commerce.
And so exact same feature. So it's got like lists and promotions and impressions and
Yep, exactly. And of course, the terminology will be switching from screens instead of pages. But yes, all of that functionality that we've talked about is available for mobile apps.
one thing I think is amazing is that we talk about this as enhanced e-commerce, right? But really, the system is so flexible. You can use it for anything, right? If I'm in travel as well, I could use this like a trip is a product, and I could do impressions and everything.
Yep, and we've actually heard some really interesting feedback from customers who are publishers or travel customers who are looking at enhanced e-commerce features to do exactly that type of analysis around impressions and clicks and purchases, so that they're, of course, trying to optimize their site or their apps, and so they can take advantage of enhanced e-commerce to do that type of analysis.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really cool. Wow, so I think we've covered a lot of stuff. It feels like we've covered a lot of stuff. So maybe we could leave everyone with a few quick tips. So maybe could you leave us with a few tips about how to get onto enhanced e-commerce? What do you need to do?
Sure. So enhanced e-commerce does have a whole slew of different features, and so one, we do recommend having an analytics strategy so that you understand the types of information that you're looking to track. Once you kind of have that high-level strategy in place, I recommend really phasing the implementation. So specifically, I would track everything that's available within that shopping behavior funnel, so things like product detail views, add to cart, checkout, and purchase, so that you're able to take advantage of those really easily, or right away, rather. And then sort of the next phase is around product lists, which are a bit more advanced because you're tracking impressions. And so you want to be able to understand what are your different product lists on your site. So typically we break these out into search results pages, category pages, and merchandising rules. But again, you'd want to make sure how those map to your site. And then finally, refunds is another type of advanced feature. So I'd probably say that that type of progression makes it more manageable for a lot of our customers to get started.
That's awesome. And I would just say use tag management, right? And
Yes.
use a data layer.
Yes. Yes.
I think that's my favorite thing in the universe, data layers. Cool. Awesome. Wow. So this was great. We covered a lot of ground here and a lot of stuff, and I just wanted to let everybody know that we are recording this Hangout, and we are going to push it out again next week. So you will be able to watch a recording of this. And I also wanted to let everyone know again that this Hangout was part of our current Analytics Academy course on measuring e-commerce businesses, and the course is going to run through July 31st. Now, the material will be available after that, but if you want to take advantage of some of the great resources we have, like a community forum and a G+ page, you need to work on the course prior to that. So check out analyticsacademy.withgoogle.com if you're not enrolled in the course. If you are, good luck finishing up. We hope everyone earns a certificate at the end. And I want to thank Marcia for coming on and telling us all about enhanced e-commerce.
Thanks for having me, Justin.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.